Welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to put spool seals in the Bobcat 773 control valve. Spool seals is a common issue with leaking, and you don't have to take out the whole control valve to do it. However, spool seals on this machine are not leaking, but while I'm in there, it's cheap insurance to go ahead and replace the spool seals. There's another problem with this valve, okay? And I want to see if you can spot the problem. I want you to spot the problem and then tell me the symptoms of that problem. And I want 10 people is going to win something. The very first person who can email me the correct problem and the symptoms that the problem would cause, I'm sending you $100. And then you got 9 more chances after that. So 10 people, subscribers only, please. Shoot me an email. My email is in the description, and I'm also going to update the description with how many chances there are still to win. So up to 10 prizes. The very first person gets $100, and then kind of tiers down from there. So before we start this project, I like to do it with the arms in the air. Safety first, man. There's no fooling around here. If those arms drop, you're dead. No ifs, ands, buts, maybes. You're dead, okay? So I've got my boom lock in place. I've also got my crane supporting, and when we pull the spools out of the control valve, we still have load checks. I'm not relying on the load checks, but they are in the control valve, so we should be able to pull the spool out, and the load checks still hold the hydraulic pressure in the boom, keeping it up. So it's kind of a 3-factor safety thing here, but I'm not taking any of them for granted. Everything. It's safer to do this with the arms on the ground, but it's more of a pain in the butt. It's much easier to do it with the arms in the up, but please, safety, safety, safety. And remember, please don't answer in the description. I want you to email this to me, and then once everyone's guessed it, once the 10 tries have already been used up, we'll put the actual issue in the description of the video. So, first thing we had to do is go to our dealership, and we're going to buy the parts for the control valve. Majority of time, this is all you need is the actual, this is a double lip seal. There used to be a quad seal, then there was a single lip seal. Now we got a double lip seal, these turquoise seals here. And when I say spool, we're doing the lift and tilt spools. So you also see a spring and 2 balls here. And this is for the lift, float, detent. And sometimes these shoot out and get lost. That's why I recommend you just go ahead and buy them if you're going to do this job. But, you know, after watching the video, you shouldn't lose them. However, this machine is not working correctly in the float position, so either the spring and balls are already missing or they're rusted and damaged. So that's why I always buy a set to go with this job, just in case. So this machine has manual drive and manual controls. This is not manual or electric over hydraulic, which means we've got actuators. This is all mechanical linkage on this one. So either way, what I like to do is remove this whole front steering plate. I know it kind of looks intimidating, but you can have this plate out in 5 minutes and you get a lot better access to this side of the valve. And you know, this machine, we already got pretty good access to the back side of this valve, which is good. So let's start by getting the front steering plate out. So I've got my magnetic tray set up. I love these to kind of hold tools and all of our extra hardware. So I've already marked my steering linkage. There is a full setup, but since I've already got this steering set up, I went ahead and marked them. So I'm going to remove these bolts first. Okay, now if we sometimes you might have electric controls on both steering levers, and the wires run through the lever out the bottom, and then there's plugs inside here. So we just want to just go ahead and unplug those controls, and that's just going to come out with that. This is where your red knob, your manual release, is supposed to be. The knob is missing, but I just take off the rubber grommet, and it's just going to lift right up over that valve. Now I've got 8 screws around the perimeter of the steering plate here. So let's just go ahead and take out those 8 screws. And then I've got these 2 screws in the very front here, and that holds on kind of our bracket for our dampeners and our reverse alarm bracket. So I just like to take those bolts out. And there is a nut on the back side, of course. And then I've got to take out my throttle lever bracket, and there's just 2 bolts holding the throttle lever on. And there is, depending on the machine, there might be nuts on the other side. And then there's a bracket holding some wiring on here for the reverse wiring sensors. Just a little 7/16 nut and bolt. It's just a little P-clamp. Throttle lever, it just hooks to a little rod down in there. It's got a little 90-degree bend on it, so we just snap it in when we put it back together. Now in theory, I should be able to wiggle this plate out. This is my reverse alarm bracket. I'm not going to disconnect the wires on the switches, which the switches are damaged anyways. It wouldn't matter. But just get that out of the way. And now this should slide out. So now this is our view. Now this cross beam right here, this cross beam is for the lift. So it connects to our foot pedal over here via bolt. Then we got a pivot bolt, and then we got the linkage where it checks to, or hooks onto the control valve. And these are just pinned in like that. And then there's a little pin that we'll have to get out. But first thing I want to do is take out the center pivot bolt, and then I'll unbolt it from the linkage over here so that we can get that rod kind of up and out of the way. And now I'm going to remove the clevis pins from the lift and tilt spool themselves. So on the tilt, there's another little clevis or a pin. So you got the tilt done, And now I can pull the pin for the lift. Now I can get my lift linkage bar up and out of the way. And I understand this is hard to see, but we've got a rubber boot that kind of protects the front of these, that kind of keeps dust out of the spool itself. And they're held on with little 3/16. We're going to use a 3/16 Allen head and a ratchet to remove that, so 2 bolts for each spool. Okay, here's our protective boots. That's one. There's the other. And then we got our seal retainer itself that comes off as well. And there's also, behind that seal retainer, is an O-ring. Maybe you can see that, but the O-ring, these are staying in place. I'm just going to leave them there. They're going to be fine, but that is something that you might want to replace if you're doing spool seals. So now that we've got the front all disconnected, now we can go to the back and start working on those. So same thing for these. You know, this is where our detent for our lift is going to be held. And you will see oil leaking out of there if we have a problem. And then in this cap, there is a weep hole in that cap, and you'll see oil leaking out of that if you have bad seals. There should be no oil leaking from either one of those with good seals. So now that I've got the bolts loose on the lift spool, I don't want to pull this outer case off because that's where our detent ball and springs are going to be under there. So I'm going to push the spool from the front. See, I'm not pulling on that at all. And I'm going to grab the whole thing and slide the complete spool out. And then we just got one more to get out. Now I can remove this cover for the tilt because there's nothing but a spring and retainer in there. And I'm going to push my tilt spool out from the front. And you notice how the spool seal is coming out with the spool? And that's how we're going to put it back together. We're going to put the new seal on there, then we're going to slide it back in like that. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the spools themselves. Now this is the tilt spool. Nothing special about that, but we're going to just take our, we got our seal retainer right here, and we're just going to take our seal and slide it off. go ahead and get a new seal. When you look at these double lip seals, see there's one side of the seal that is wider than the other. The wide part of the seal always goes toward the valve body. So we know that this stem's coming in like that. We want our big part, which is on this side, right there. Now, ideally, Bobcat wants you to take this spring and retainer apart, the centering spring, and put the seal on from this way, because since we've got all these edges right here, we got to slide this all the way down. I've made a little slipper to slide this down before, but usually with the oil on there, I just carefully slide it over all the little humps there and get that seal down into position. The seals are pretty tough. Yes, you can scratch them. I'm sure it's been done. I've never had an issue with one, but just something to keep in mind. So that's it, tilt spool, ready to slide back in. Now let's look at a couple things on the lift spool. You'll notice there's holes drilled in here. Now these holes are for the float option. So when you push your pedal all the way forward, your arms will float. Inside here, I'm going to go ahead and pull this apart. And that's kind of what I thought. It wasn't holding, so the spring and balls are missing. The spring would go through here and the ball detents will go into the actual detent sleeve itself. So there's an E-clip here. Remove the E-clip from the end. And this is going to be our detent sleeve. And this is our detent bonnet. So there is some rust in there. Doesn't look too bad. I think we're just going to clean it out. A little brake clean. Just going to clean up the detent sleeve here. Okay, same thing on the lift spool as we did on the tilt. Slide the old one off. Slide our new seal on. Remember the big part toward the valve body. Our spring retainer just stays into position down here. So now my new seal is installed. So remember, I'm talking about these holes that are drilled right here. So in order for the factory to be able to cross port this spool, they have to drill in from the end here. Now we would, if this was actually leaking out of the bonnet side itself, and I wasn't 100% sure it's the spool seal, there's also a plastic plug. There's a retainer screw, you back that out, a plastic plug and an O-ring for the cross drill, so the drill can come in through here and drill the spool, and they have to reseal that. So if you're not sure, cheap insurance has replaced that plug and O-ring inside the end here. And I'll put up a little graphic here so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But since this one wasn't leaking, like I said, we're fixing a different issue, and you've got enough information in this video to win that prize to tell me what the symptoms were, or what the problem was and what the symptoms would be. So just keep that in mind, that there is another plastic plug and seal inside there. So I'm using some special pliers here to put this spring and ball back together. Now I'm going to leave a card up here to show you how to do it without these special pliers. You can press the spring and balls, and then we can slide the detent sleeve right down over it. and remover pliers. Again, it's not 100% necessary to have these, it just helps. Okay, so now I've got my sleeve installed. I'm going to put my bonnet back over the sleeve, washer, and reinstall my E-clip. Okay, so now this is locked and loaded. If I remove this, those spring and balls are going to go shooting off and we're going to lose them. So it's important to the way we handle this to put it back in to make sure we do not remove the end bonnet here. So now both of my spools are resealed on the back side. We're just going to use a pick, pull the spool seals out from the front of the valve and slide in new ones. Okay, so I'm going to slide in my lift spool, and what I want to be careful of is that I don't push my other spool out when I slide this through. So I take the spool retainer for this side of the valve and I just kind of hold it in place with my hands while I slide this one back in. Again, handling it to make sure that this sleeve doesn't come off and we lose our detent assembly. And now I can insert my tilt spool. Same thing, using my retainer on the front side, and just hold it in by hand so we don't push our spool seal back through the other side. Like butter. And then our retainer. I used a power tool to start those screws. Sorry, Dad. So I am done with the spool seals. 90% of the time, that's what's leaking on these valve bodies. You don't have to pull the whole valve body out. It's just so much easier to do it in the machine. A lot of times, all the other seals, when you buy a full seal kit, they're never leaking, they never cause you an issue. 90% of the time. I mean, there are other situations. However, everything you need to know about what was wrong with this valve and the symptoms was in this video. So remember, first 10 people to tell me what was wrong and the symptoms of that being wrong wins. And I'm the very first person. Like I said, you email me, I send you out $100, and then down from there. So I will keep you updated in the comment section or in the description section about who the winners are and how many spots there are left to win. So good luck. Let me know what you think. I welcome all the guesses. I'm looking forward to it, and thanks for watching.